Lord of Mysteries 2, Circle of Inevitability. Chapter 75, Meeting Madame Pualis again. Outside the administrator's residence, a building transformed from an old castle, Lumian strolled through the gardens and approached the front door. He said to the valet standing guard, "I need a word with Madame Pualis." The valet, clad in a crimson shirt and ivory pants, sized him up warily and asked, "What's this about? Is this brat here to make trouble?" Lumian scoffed. "That's not for you to know. Why would some servant care so much? Who do you think you are? How many kids have you popped out?" The valet hesitated before deciding to pass the message to Madame Pualis and let her decide if she wanted to entertain this cheeky young man. Lumian loitered by the entrance for a few minutes. When the valet returned, Lumian said, "Madame will see you in the small parlor." The small parlor was familiar to Lumian. The few times he had accompanied his sister here, he had been entertained in that very room. Without needing directions, Lumian made his way to the correct room. The valet trailed behind like an obedient dog. Lumian sprawled on the sofa in the parlor and helped himself to the black tea. Then Madame Pualis glided through the doorway. The lady was dressed to kill in an exquisite black corset dress, a matching shawl draped over her shoulders. She wore a slightly askew lady's round hat and a diamond necklace laced in gold. The outfit struck Lumian as familiar. He realized that Madame Pualis had worn this very ensemble when she came to seduce him. She did that on purpose, didn't she? Lumian thought with an icy smile. "Good morning, Madame Pualis." Just as the greeting left his lips, Lumian suddenly noticed the figure beside Madame Pualis. It wasn't Kathy, the lady's maid, but the midwife who had met her demise at Ryan's hands just yesterday. The midwife wore a grayish-white dress. Her eyes were blank, her face expressionless. Her skin had a bluish tinge, identical to when Lumian had seen her corpse in the garden the previous evening. However, she wasn't carrying any gardening tools this time. Bringing the midwife instead of her maid? She did that on purpose too, didn't she? Lumian couldn't help the cynical thought. Madame Pualis smiled. It should be noon by now. She settled into the armchair that signified the host, while the midwife stood to one side like an accessory. "If you haven't eaten lunch, it's not noon yet," Lumian quipped. His heart raced underneath the retort. He suspected Madame Pualis had brought the midwife here to interrogate him about yesterday's events. If he didn't handle this well and Leah's group didn't restart the cycle in time, Lumian suspected he might have to play daddy for a few minutes. Or longer. Madame Pualis glanced at him, her bright eyes sparkling with an inscrutable smile. Casually, she asked, "What seems to be the trouble?" Lumian decided to cut to the chase. Solemnly, he said, "Madame, you must have realized we're stuck in a time loop." As he spoke, he watched Madame Pualis's face closely, alert for any reaction. If she revealed surprise, shock, or confusion, he would quickly add, "Just kidding." Then, he would start with something odd and see how she responded. Only then would he consider telling her about the time loop. Of course, if Madame Pualis looked like she already knew and her secret was out, escape would be his top priority. The odds of escape were slim in that scenario, but how would he know if there was any hope without trying? Madame Pualis sized Lumian up for a few seconds, then smiled. "Looks like you've found a boss too." She didn't seem surprised by the time loop concept, nor did she look puzzled. That was as good as admitting she knew what was going on. Boss? That was a favorite word in Aurora's books. Did she mean some higher power that granted boons? Lumian interpreted Madame Pualis's words. He believed she could retain memories across loops only because she had a boss, some kind of protection. Lumian smiled and pretended to sigh in relief. "Seems I won't need to explain much." "What are you getting at?" Pualis asked, still smiling. The midwife stood motionless beside her like a mannequin. Lumian had an excuse prepared and launched into it with enough charm to convince anyone. "People outside already know about Corda's abnormality. If we don't end this loop soon, this place will be wiped out. Everyone dies. We're in the same boat. Only by uniting can we avoid sinking." Only then do we have a chance of finding the key to escape this loop and return to normal life. Madam, time is running out. Let's work together. Madame Pualis listened with a faint smile, not interrupting Lumien's story. At this, she chuckled. Who said we're in this together? What? Could she be the one wanting to sink the boat? Lumien grew alarmed. Madame Pualis maintained her smile. Why should I cooperate with you? I can leave here at a specific time. W.H. Lumien was stunned, but a glimmer of hope flickered. Are you saying you have a way out of the time loop? You only need to do something at a precise time? Madame Pualis nodded and sipped her tea from fine porcelain. She said nothing else. The perks of a higher power's protection. Wait, this isn't the first cycle. Why is she still here? Could other cycles have restarted before that specific time? That explains why she didn't pursue us infiltrating the castle and killing the midwife. She fears the three Beyonders causing trouble and forcibly restarting the cycle. Lumien grasped things that had puzzled him. He suspected Madame Pualis was also waiting for the 12th night. Amid his thoughts, Lumien smiled. I wonder if you can take Aurora and me out of this cycle? What official investigators? I've never heard of them. Madame Pualis appraised him with amusement. Why should I help you? Didn't you say that love? Lumien stopped, unable to continue. He meant to mention Madame Pualis's words about love, hoping she might save him and Aurora out of kindness. But since Madame Pualis likely desired his sister, he couldn't say it. If Madame Pualis loved him, a shameless man like Lumien would have played the love card and offered to bear her child to get them out of this loop. Well, he would grit his teeth and give birth himself if it meant Madame Pualis evacuating him and Aurora from this cycle. Madame Pualis's expression shifted slightly. After a few seconds of silence, she said, Are you suggesting love is unfathomable? Saving her despite clearly wanting her dead for her mistake? Lumien didn't answer. He could tell Madame Pualis referred to as she. Madame Pualis didn't expect a response. She sighed. But what if it's irredeemable? Irredeemable. Lumien's heart sank like plunging into an icy lake in early spring. Regaining his breath, he asked for confirmation. You mean, at that time, you can only take a few people, but that doesn't include me or Aurora? Madame Pualis nodded. You can see it that way. Looks like I still have to rely on myself. Lumien sighed, forcing calm. The rise and crash of hope was unpleasant indeed. He thought for a moment, then smiled. Madam, the three foreigners and I will explore the cathedral's underground later. If anything happens, the cycle might restart ahead of time. We won't even make it to Lent, let alone the 12th night. Madame Pualis narrowed her eyes, chin raised. Are you threatening me? No, just a reminder. Lumien smiled sincerely, the picture of relaxed. Outwardly, he feared angering Madame Pualis and being confined here to give birth. The three investigators would restart the cycle if he didn't emerge 15 minutes later. Madame Pualis gazed into Lumien's eyes for a few seconds. Seeing no flinch or evasion, she suddenly smiled. You're truly interesting. It would be lovely if you and your sister became my lovers. Without waiting for a response, she turned to the midwife. You destroyed a heretic spellmaster, yet I didn't blame you. I'm merciful enough, but you still expect my help? Heretic spellmaster? Lumien filed away the term and said earnestly, This isn't about help. It's about doing what benefits everyone. Madame Pualis fell silent for a few seconds before smiling again. I won't explore the cathedral's underground with you, but for Aurora's sake and your courage, I'll provide some help if anything happens. Lumien was satisfied to negotiate this much. He stood and mimicked the gentlemanly posture from his sister's books. Pressing a hand to his chest, he bowed. I thank you, my lady. Madame Pualis chuckled. Shouldn't it be my sunshine? She referred to what Lumien had said in a previous loop. Madam, you are my sunshine. Lumien felt embarrassed but had always been shameless. Pretending not to hear, he left the small parlor. After descending the hill from the castle and entering Cordoue, Lumien spotted Leah, Ryan and Valentine waiting to greet him. How did it go? Leah asked with a smile. Lumian recounted his conversation with Madame Pualis, concluding, This is the best outcome we could hope for. That's right. We can still count on someone to help in our direst moment. Ryan nodded. Lumian asked, Did you get a reply? Before visiting the castle, Ryan had reported Madame Pualis wasn't truly of the Roquefort family and Pulet's photo was in her room. Leah exhaled, answering for Ryan. Our superiors remind us to consider the possibility of Pulet becoming a woman through potion or power. As expected, Lumian tersely acknowledged. When do we explore the cathedrals underground? Ryan had already decided. In a deep voice, he said, Now.